of the group activity. I know you worked hard. I was one of the groups, and we had a really fruitful exchange. To the table to my left, please, silence. We have very little time left because the group work took on a little bit longer than expected, which is great because it was very valuable. But I have two specific requests to the spokespersons of each group mainly. First of all, save your notes, because while here we'll provide you with a brief summary. We're interested about everything that was discussed in all of the groups. So please, those of you who will act as spokespersons, a special request, save the notes. And secondly, also for the spokespersons, please be brief, very brief. Now I'll ask Jenny and Lawrence to moderate this next session, but please make their jobs as easy as possible. That way we can close properly for this upcoming activity, which is very important as well. That is it. Very well, colleagues. Good morning. After these incredibly fruitful discussions, the idea is that together we can harvest, we can reap what we sowed. So please raise your hands, the spokespersons for each table. Very well. So we're going to kick off with group number one, same order. And we're going to have 2.5 minutes so that in a very brief summary fashion, you can tell us about what you discussed. And because afterwards we'll have a further discussion. So group one, please go ahead. Silence, please, in the room. And stand up so that the camera can capture your beauty. Of group number one, we reached the conclusion that with regards to the challenges and pain points of AgTech, we have differences among languages and expectations of stakeholders or developers and users. And second point, the high cost of pivoting ideas in order to fulfill the expectations of the market and of the clients. And finally, the sustainability of the company in order to be in a balance point. And with regards to point two, if we were ministers, what type of actions we would take to promote? We have the digital literacy activities for population in the countryside and for the population at large. And the second is a public policy to create an open platform for the linkage of demands and needs versus solutions and agricultural technologies. Thank you very much, Oriana. Now, group two, colleague, please. Very well. As a representative of group two, we have as one of the main challenges, the education is not a strength, and in particular, in early childhood, there are no programs in schools to educate on agriculture. The second is there are no synergies among stakeholders, and the existing ones are not healthy oftentimes. Another one is the whole topic of budget, which oftentimes is concentrated in some specific targets, and that generates problems for public and private budgets. And now, as ministers, the measures we would take are, number one, budgets developed for the development of technologies, and these budgets need to be decentralized, and they also need to be competitive so that they are not lost in mere bureaucracy. The second is to create spaces for the digitalization of agriculture, also decentralized, possibly public-private, territorial, for decision-making purposes. And the third is the role of the academic realm, and it's about generating a public policy for training for farmers and their families. Thank you very much, colleagues. Group 3. Good afternoon. Very well. Group number 3, what we've noticed, we have 3 challenges and 3 points of pain. In the term of 3 challenges, we have human capital, the lack of training, both by the supply side and also the demand side. The case of product market fit, we need to validate the product before it reaches 2. The lack of resources, we see that there's a lot of lack of resources among AgTechs. And then challenges. The challenges we identified is to make the rural world attractive again. In the case of Ecuador, for example, they say that their grid of farmers is 65 years. What they need is for us, younger people, to be able to see the rural realm in a more positive light. Also, to promote the creation of greater environments that can serve as a window for AgTechs and all the stakeholders who are part of the ecosystem. Now, as far as the question as ministers, that was a bit complicated too, but we reached a consensus where we believe that as ministers, first of all, we need to promote the role of the state as a co-stakeholder in this system to allow to formulate an innovation structure and to deliver digital kits through promoting biddings for innovation, allowing younger companies or startups to resolve issues that the state may have identified in general, aside from also promoting fiscal policies to improve the benefits for all of these innovation companies, such as, for example, the case of Colombia. That's what we had for you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Group number 4. Hello, good afternoon. Well, in group number 4, in terms of the problems, in terms of the main pain points that we mapped, we discussed several things. If we had had longer, we probably would have carried on this conversation forever. We have many pain points, but the main ones among them are the lack of understanding regarding what an AgTech is. Basically, we're talking about you need to convince farmers that AgTechs can help them. It's difficult to have the data to validate and convince them. We discussed the fact that there's a lack of education concerning what AgTechs do and what we can offer to the sector. And this was also linked to the difference in timeframes. Academic timeframes, political timeframes move very differently than the technology and innovation timeframes. And that feeds into the lack of education, the lack of literacy concerning what we do in our sector. And we identified this as a very strong pain point to strengthen these type of public-private, academic-private partnerships. Now, in terms of measures taken, there are 3 important measures that we need to take. At the government level, expos, conferences at the national level could be carried out. These would provide a springboard, a platform to build rapport with the farmers so that all AgTechs could consolidate, gather, have a conversation like we're doing here, but also present, give an expo, and give visibility within the sector of each country or region. At the same time, we think it's important for generalistic policies, not so much specific policies, but generalistic policies that give room to this correlation among different sectors, a policy that can implement things such as the need for the digital realm, but also the agricultural sector. And last, but not least, for these policies to have accountability measures, to really measure the progress made. Thank you very much.
Bueno, ¿se me escucha bien?
Can you hear me? Yes. Very well. First of all, thank you very much, team. We had a great conversation. I'll go a little bit fast over pains and challenges, and I'll focus more time to solutions. We identified three main challenges. First, financing, the financing of innovation, the creation of startups to solve specific problems. Then we spoke of the lack of public-private partnership and the lack of articulation that exists among public organizations and all of those companies and the whole private sector, which is the one that creates economic value. Thirdly, third point we identified were funds. Funds for capital, they are not coordinated, they often do not support local initiatives, or they lack alignment in light of the actual problems that exist in a given state or government, or projects that are doing things that are different from what the line of financing is tackling. So, these different challenges, we propose three specific solutions to them. A platform for public-private partnerships, wherein problems are visible. All states know what their problems are. They can publish them there, give visibility of these issues to the private sector. It can be a digital platform to create visibility concerning these problems, and the private sector may somehow identify the problem and try out their solutions, test their solutions, maybe some type of mechanism through a bidding process to publish these problems where the private sector applies, the one that is more competitive, the one that shows most value, can get a chance to test its solution. And thus, the public sector manages and the private sector solves the problems of the state. Then we discuss the tax exemptions to foster the creation and implementation of innovation, both on the supply and demand side. Tax breaks for the people who create innovation, the startups in this case, like it's being done in other lines of business, and also tax exemptions for the people who invest in innovation. We know that there's a circumstance in Latin America where 50% of the economy is on the black market. And to inject capital into this market, it has to be official funds. And therefore, working on tax exemptions that could somehow foster this money going to innovation and the implementation and not just lay there. Third measure, we discussed of coordinated financing. Perhaps today, there's a lot of public financing that is being managed inefficiently, and perhaps leveraging existing vehicles such as risk capital funds, and these could capture this venture capital to create economic value and to offer much more efficient solution compared to what the public sector currently does. That's it. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Who is next?
Seis. Gabriela.
¿Quién es el relator del grupo 6?
Who is the spokesperson for group number 6? Group 6 is here?
Bueno, nos autonombramos
Well,
Sala Colombia en vez de grupo 6.
we called ourselves Columbia Hall instead of group 6. That's why we didn't answer.
De ahí la demora.
That's sorry for the delay. We identified three challenges or pain points that we all shared in a way. The first, mainly because we were a group that was a bit different from the others, because we comprised all of the areas of innovation for the sector. And so we're looking at startups from outside and not specifically as stakeholders or having a starring role. So looking at somebody else, we sometimes said that sometimes the definition of value proposal of the startups is not clearly defined, and therefore that weakens their proposal or the solution that they are tackling, and therefore the business model that supports them. Another pain point is to truly achieve financing, not just at this preliminary stage and in the development stage, but to truly achieve financing sustained in time to really achieve this permanent growth on the market. Another challenge is to ensure that this public-private partnership and articulation with all the remaining stakeholders in the system be strengthened in sustainable spaces that can truly be the driver of scaling up for the enhancement of new markets. Here, we divided this question also focusing and analyzing the problems for the implementation. And we were also looking at 3 points that were extremely necessary for implementation to be effective. And we discussed how the implementation of a technology to feel that we're truly participants in the co-development or co-design of a technology facilitates the implementation process itself. A second part that links to implementation is to have available the inputs made by public authorities in terms of testing, trials, validations, in order to facilitate getting closer to the farmers. And a third point that is fundamental to foster the implementation is to strive for these solutions offered by the startups to become more and more simple, more user-friendly, to consider the different case uses in which the technology is implemented. Because sometimes people think that things that are complex are more expensive and in addition, difficult to use. So the idea is for farmers to feel that they're close to this technology so that they can actually use it and promptly. Now, with regards to the policies and the possibility of being ministers and making decisions, we had a hard time with that. We had an endless number of proposals, but we ended up summarizing them in 3. First of all, to achieve a process for digital literacy that is inclusive, extensive, and enabling of productive conditions. This, in turn, requires creating a policy for the development of infrastructure that favors that digitalization. Then, a second stage or a second political decision-making stage would have to entail that innovation in agriculture is part of the national agenda. Sometimes other policy, other more industrial areas are enhanced, but not the agricultural sector. Having it mapped on the agenda doesn't mean it's just one more item. It means that it has fostering policies, subsidy policies, mechanisms to promote the consolidation of the system. And the third and final point is to achieve financing mechanisms that are public-private, focused on establishing a link between the 4 elements of the helix, which encompasses public sector, academia, institutes of research and technology, but also as the baseline condition to favor that financing. And that financing envisioned both in terms of financing farmers, but also financing innovation hubs, ecosystems, where the governance of that hub or space is fostered by the various stakeholders. And that's essentially it. Thank you very much. We have one final group, which was also in the Mexico hall. Colleague over there. Very well. Our group also was really great. We started with the challenges and the technical side. First of all, we identified that there are lengthy timeframes to validate technology, and this impacts the benefits for the farmer. On the one hand, on the market side, due to the long biological cycles involved, and also because of a technical know-how on the side of entrepreneurs and new entrepreneurs in terms of truly understanding how the ecosystem works and how to maximize the implementation and validation timeframes. Now, in terms of trade challenges, it's difficult to obtain clients. And this, in light of scaling up a technology solution, slow, lengthy cycles, highly atomized. There's a lack of validation of the financial benefits that this can entail for the farmers so that they get their buy-in. And there's also an interesting proposal. Farmers are often not slow in implementing technology. That's a common element. But oftentimes, when technology is good and is well adapted and you achieve the word of mouth, the farmers share information about that technology by word of mouth really fast. But it's difficult, but it can be created. And finally, we need more sustainable financing based on the needs of agriculture, not just venture capital, maybe even traditional capital for the agricultural realm. And we see that there's an opportunity for growth there as well. In terms of solutions, first and foremost, policies to train entrepreneurs concerning the agricultural realm. Not generally a generalistic startup training is adapted to agriculture. We think that there's specific training that can be better suited and create more efficient solutions. Also develop policies for financing that also envision or contemplate public-private partnerships. We believe that the public sector has a fundamental role, especially in the early stage, in developing the seedlings to the solutions, but they can also help scaling up the solutions, supported by investment funds that have knowledge and that apply that pressure needed so that startups really make the most, so that it's not just free money, but rather there's pressure to generate benefits. And finally, what we're doing right now, generating ecosystems, developing platforms that create visibility on the offer side. This has been seen time and time again in the past few days. And this platform has to be focused on consultants, advisors, and people who are already in contact with the farmers to ensure a more prompt implementation. That's it. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much for providing follow-up. Lawrence and myself, we'll share our comments, then we can move on to the next segment. Very brief. How can you be brief with so much information shared? What's great is that we can see some clear patterns. One pattern is that we need to work on the ecosystem throughout the value chain, establish partnership, collaboration. This can be done through different instruments, both fiscal, brokering, linkage, etc. I'm also quite interested of the fact that the product market fit was mentioned. It needs to be worked on from the very beginning, but throughout the whole life cycle of the product to make it agile. And that's not just a matter up to the private realm. It's up to the public realm as well. It's testing, it's showing value. It has to be a public-private partnership. So these are 2 points that I highlighted just very briefly. And with that, I give it up to Jenny. Very brief. Well, I'll also try to be brief then. I think that this is an opportunity to have a broad systemic outlook, because we talk about systemic challenges in education, in infrastructure, and we cannot design a solution for each one of these elements. So I think that all of this harvesting of learning experiences highlights the need to work together, public-private, to change the traditional paradigm. This is not just one way of financing or the other. We need to develop innovative ways and develop policies, but also really the implementation structure so that these policies can become reality. And this will require our joint effort from the development of the startups, as well as the public policies required to accompany them. Well, thank you very much for your group effort. Congratulations to you all for your commitment and the level of exchange that we experienced. Obviously, thanks to Jenny and Lawrence for moderating this session, and Rosa for proposing and opening this session. What we did here was simply, in a very express manner, we forced ourselves to highlight the most important points of what was discussed. As Lawrence mentioned, there was an incredible variety and value in everything that was discussed, and that's why we asked the spokesperson to save the notes for us, aside from the fact that we have a full recording of everything, because we want to be able to process, transform this, and package it in a very concrete, specific, and accessible manner for those who make decisions at the political level and who have an impact on this realm. So thank you all very much. We say goodbye with a round of applause to everyone for this session. And we move on to the next session. While Carlos and Francisco come over, Francisco Astaburuaga, I think I learned how to pronounce your last name. It was difficult for me. We heard from him yesterday. And Carlos Ruiz, my colleague, you have seen him. He's been keeping very low profile for the past few days, but you've seen him hang around. He's the brain behind all of this. He's been committed for the past 6 and 7 months, working day in, day out, many hours to make this meeting a reality, this meeting that we've been holding since Monday. So I take this opportunity to thank Carlos publicly for his effort and the many hours that he's devoted to make this a reality.
Without further ado, Carlos, go ahead and introduce this session. Thank you very much, Federico. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to start with a round of applause without saying anything. And it's not collaborative work of this team and other institutions who have also supported, so I also thank them. Since we're have a bit of a time constraint, I'll introduce the following activity. This activity is a central activity, we believe, because here we'll share with all of you regarding institutionalization of AgTech network we started in 2022 with many of the colleagues that are present. Therefore, it's a necessary and important discussion and core to continue building going forward. And without further ado, I'll explain the structure for everyone to keep in mind. We'll start with a presentation from Francisco Astaburuaga. To my right, you learned about the initiative yesterday they have from Chile. Now he'll share a bit more. And we'll also have a presentation from Eliana Camargo with a similar initiative in Colombia. And then Federico to my left will give a brief introduction of how we're doing with the state of AgTech network. And probably the most important part will be to have an exchange with everyone present, the various ideas with a methodology, with Menti and with open exchange. So without further ado, Francisco Astaburuaga, we introduced him yesterday, but for those who came recently, he's the president of the AgTech Chile Directorate in promoting agro-tech industry in Chile. He has exchanged with many here. So I give you the floor. Thank you, Carlos.
¿Esto hay que prenderlo o algo así? ¿Está allá? Ahí está. No. Ok. Perfecto. Bueno, gracias por la oportunidad.
Thank you for this opportunity to showcase what we're doing. and AgTech. I'm going to skip the initial part just to give you a general context. AgTech Chile is an association that started last year, made up of companies who are innovating or providing technological service in the field. So basically, our main objective is to facilitate and support the introduction of technology in the field and accelerate this process to promote startups in the system. Currently, it's close to 150 companies throughout Chile, and we already have partnerships with the public and private organizations from throughout the world. A bit of this presentation is to show how AgTech came about in a little more detail, which was our process from the idea all the way to what we are now. And starting with this first event that was organized in 2022, it was an organic event that was generated from a WhatsApp group of several entrepreneurs that wanted to meet to share ideas without a specific agenda. And from that event came what AgTech is now, with organizations who wanted to join us, who saw the idea, who were waiting for this idea, for this group to be formed. And it started growing organically in an accelerated fashion. So this started based on the main challenges and how we can solve these. I won't go into detail because we've discussed this widely, but and I'll update this as soon as I get back to Chile. But it is very much aligned to all our discussions. As far as the more technical part, we formally made the constitution of this, and we had the luck to contact very powerful law firms in Chile who were very interested in being part of this partnership. And we had even 3 offers from different law firms, all pro bono, all free, very beneficial, and it helped us create a very sound beginning. And something very important that came from that discussion was legitimacy versus agility. AgTech came about pretty much as a startup, very quick, very disorganized, but doing things quickly. And we realized that to create 150 companies, we had to strengthen legitimacy, how to consider all the companies' opinions in AgTech, not leaving anyone aside, without leaving aside agility, which are opposed some way. It's a complex balance, but we have solved this with the working committees. We have several projects in AgTech, and the idea is all the members, 150 companies, to be part of AgTech, not to be a select group, but the companies in the association are the ones who make the association's projects, and this involves everyone, and it makes more legitimate the decisions, and then the funding, or how to take it forward and scale up. And it's happened because of the founders, the directors, the entrepreneurs have made this possible, who pretty much have invested their hours in making projects and pay programmers for hours to create AgTech. And it's been a successful bootstrapping, and we hope to continue growing this way with the support of all the companies. And we have also received support of many institutions, via India, Marfil, who have been waiting possibly for this association, which is very much aligned with their current objectives. Our ideas for this association to be self-funded, to not depend on public funds or sponsors necessarily, but for it to generate value to the ecosystem, tangible support that's reflected with funds to create more projects and to use what exists. What we do before any project, we ask who's doing what they're doing, and we ask Stanley what they're doing, And if they're already doing it, we just take it from them and we steal their credit. Same thing with FIA. It's been very fruitful to start from that base. So the idea for this is to show the projects we're currently developing and a bit of the results we have achieved. And we discussed this yesterday, how to generate connection instances. We have participated in several events throughout Chile, very well institutionalized events with large institutions in and out of Chile. Has allowed to make AgTech visible and give it the sufficient importance to take the next step to be known by the ministry, associations, larger companies, to be able to develop even more projects in a more strategic way. We also created a national co-work network. We believe that AgTech industry must come together. We have developed gathering points in different parts where startups are constantly sharing ideas, sharing clients, and reap benefits of in-person co-work. These are free co-works where you could come and work and build your company. They even have spaces we're currently developing for collaboration, biotech laboratories, working areas, more hardware, and with shared areas between 5 or 10 startups, and very productive. We also have international tours this year, and next year we'll be participating in World AgriTech in California, AIMA in Italy, London Tech Week, and in Peru also. The idea is to expand this internationally, take startups and farmers outside of Chile for these farmers to see what is being done in California and to be inspired to then hire our services back in Chile. All this supported by ProChile, which is the institution that promotes exports in Chile, and they make these trips more feasible. They finance 50 to 80% of these trips, and they support startups in their early stage. This has a lot of information, but this program, Open Innovation Program, we've been very happy about this. It's focused for now in large companies where we are compiling challenges in agro and create a process for these companies to be part of the AgTech ecosystem. So basically, we make a list of the challenges. We have meetings for them to attack these challenges, and then we have demos, presentations, and finally demo days for this interaction between the farmers and the startup to be done correctly, for the pilot to fulfill all the specifications, for agrotech to look good, and for farmers not to abuse the time of startups. And this has turned out very well. It has generated a new source of income for the association because it becomes pretty much an advisory service for innovation. And then we have rural youth and academia. We have discussed this to some point with Lawrence on how to use what the academia is generating, how to take the youth that is finishing their course in agronomy and take them to a startup world where agronomists not necessarily has to go work in the field when they finish studies, but they can see all the different options to be an entrepreneur. It's great to have an agronomist who also knows about technology. So we're working this together with Universidad Católica as an initiative that started also from FAO, very much aligned to bring youth to the field. And one of our missions is also to make the field more sexy, and basically for youth to see all the opportunities that exist in the field and for them to stay. Rural youth are very valuable for startups because they have the network in their area and they're more capable of adopting technology. So we are able to create a network of youth in rural areas. The adoption, massification of technology is more efficient. And then there's a program focused on small producers in Chile. 70-80% are small producers, small farmers, and it's a market that many times startups cannot cover. It's not worthwhile installing a complex system in a 1 hectare producer farmer, because many times it doesn't justify it. And I like how they have different solutions have approached that to digitalize these farmers. And what we're also pursuing, very much aligned with FIA Francine, to make use of cooperatives and do it in that direction, generate a new market for startups with cooperatives. Basically, cluster farmers, 50 farmers of 2 hectares, and tell them I have a new client of the 100 hectares that will generate a great impact at financial level and social for startups. And then we have another project we're developing, and this is with Stanley here, present in collaboration with Smartfield. The idea is for AgTech to not stay only as startups, but to ground everything to the field, to take AgTech to the practice. Who haven't heard about Smartfield? It's a research center, 650 hectares that are validating technological solutions that serve as a pilot for many startups that allow us to validate the state of AgTech at national level. It allows us to have a mall of AgTech solutions. It's more like a park, like amusement park, where there's always farmers looking at 10 solutions at once with the practice and the results in the field. So it's been highly valuable to use everything AgTech does. And then we have this project, which is the Chile AgTech platform. We have seen different platforms come about these days, and this platform seeks to be a directory of startups. That's how it started. And what we are seeking here specifically is to integrate with other platforms, specifically the AICA platform that will be presented. And the idea is not to reinvent the wheel and use the platform Stanley has for technical validation, and basically use all these resources available. And this platform also has a schedule, as I said yesterday, all the funds, all the meetings that are made in AgTech world. It has a link with a WhatsApp. The farmer not only has to visit the website, but they can use a number, a WhatsApp, to learn about what solutions exist in Maule in Chile, and they'll see the 3 main solutions with the number they can call. And an important point here is validation of startups. The idea is in this directory, each startup to have awards or medals that validate who they're working with. This startup, for instance, is working with Viña Conchitoro, working with this other client, who will allow the other farmer to see immediately what this startup is doing, who I must contact to get referrals. And besides the clients, to see the impact that each startup has. The idea is for this platform to be integrated with all the AgTech systems that allows them to see how much employment is being generated, how much social, environmental impact, and financial impact is being generated by each impact, and this and thus help trade. And this will help us with something powerful, which is to produce a report, consolidated report of the system, see how much AgTech is supporting or helping economy, environmental, social aspects. And with this, showcase in real time, showcase to the ministries, to the institutions, and tell them this is what we're doing, these are our plans, this is what we believe we will do. And to close off, our next steps, or where we're going with AgTech, well, mainly continuity of project. We have several projects, and we all know here that it's not enough to just launch a project initially and wait a year. This has to last and continue growing and not lose momentum. We're also working to give form to this movement in Chile working mainly with institutions that are already created to have a joint agenda and not everyone working in parallel, but to have one sole line of work, also to make use of the international network. For that reason, this event has been very important. And finally, we open this invitation to all startups who want to come to Chile. We have a package, a help package. There are many startups from outside there, some from Peru, Argentina, and that they can come to Chile with all the package, aid with financing sources, basically to continue potentiating this pool of 150 startups. And we're also open to support creating new associations, employees associations. We have FinTech Association, we have construction, climate tech, FunTech, and we start with that base on how they helped us create this structure. And now we're happy to return that help and help other associations to continue growing. It's had a very positive impact. All these associations have been longer for more time. They're in government generating laws and initiatives, and we believe this is key to promote the ecosystem. Thank you very much, and you're all invited. I hope I didn't exceed my time. Thank you very much, Francisco. Very interesting. And we had the participation of Eliana Camargo. She's going to give a similar presentation of an AgTech association, a similar initiative in Colombia, but we're having some issues with her connection. So we'll take a little leap with Federico Berta, and hopefully we'll connect with her later, and he'll give a 5-minute presentation on the state of AgTech network, AICA's AgTech network. Very brief and possibly less than 5 minutes. What Francisco showed us is an example of institutionalization, of formalization, and collaboration between AgTechs in a country. From the beginning of this Digital Agriculture Week in 2022, the idea is for this to become an instrument to create networks in the region. We saw there were many at national level that were consolidated, some more formally, like the example we saw, or like Colombia, we'll learn about, and some not so much so. But we knew it required a regional layer, and the idea is for this to help build that regional level, to build and strengthen this regional level, and bringing in, and literal sense of the word, bringing in or entangling AgTechs. And I think we already have something. I think something was formed. You formed something, and we wanted to review that, because this is the basis of what we want to do, or what we want you to discuss with this survey Carlos shared. What do we have today? Well, we have a network with 30 AgTechs, which are the ones who participated in the Digital Agriculture Week in 2022 and 2023. Sorry, the number is wrong. It's 2022, 2023. The 2 past weeks were effective in consolidating groups, in bringing together those groups, and in these groups to have an exchange, ongoing exchange, effective ongoing exchange. Of course, now we are adding AgTechs from the 2024 Digital Agriculture Week, which are not only the winners, but those that came as guests. So specifically, we have a WhatsApp community. I think you've all seen that WhatsApp function, which is a community, an umbrella under which we have the 2 AgTech groups, the 2022 and 2023 groups. And I open this moment to request. You can do whatever you like, but we suggest and propose for you to create WhatsApp group of the 2024 AgTechs to include in this community, and to share with the other 2 WhatsApp groups of the previous weeks. And these WhatsApp group, for peace of mind of those who will be part of the 2024 group, is that there is an a very event-based exchange, non-messages every day. I know there are also parallel groups. We know that well, and that's okay. That's perfect. But in this group or in these groups, which are the official groups, there's an exchange which is fair and necessary, no spam. We use it to share novelties, opportunities, that meetings, and to ask or help in disseminating AICA events. And we also showcase the winning AgTechs, or the ones with almost 300 other AgTechs that participated in the Digital Agriculture Week 2022-2023. It's not been as intimate as with you, but we do have their contact. We can ask them to join a greater movement. And due to this network, we are forming totally informal. There's been wide participation of AgTechs, of events AICA has held, where a company asks us on an event on traceability, do you know traceability AgTechs? We do know because we learned about them in Digital Agriculture Week, and we have even held a couple of virtual meetings with AgTechs of that network, the winners of 2022-2023, where we discussed different things. And after that, there were some press releases with recommendations, and we have used that instrument from AICA. And we'll see in a moment, we have a platform like what Francisco shared, which is a type of repository, inventory of America's AgTechs. We can continue feeding. And to finish, we have from AICA the destiny we can give to a network we're trying to form, but this depends on you, which we foster conditions, and from here on it depends on you. What we can offer from AICA that we do with other type of networks or associations is to promote and coordinate, to act as secretariat. We, not personally, but we can offer that as long as you're interested in projecting this and formalizing, if it's useful to have this space for that, for you to define where you want to take all of this we have on screen. Thank you, Federico. We have not been able to resolve the Ileana's participation. So if someone knows about this Colombia initiative to bring to the table another model to bring together AgTechs in the region, well, you're all welcome to bring that to this discussion. At this moment, I would like to ask Eric Quiroz from AgTech Apps and Matias Okipid from UCropit to come to the table to have a brief exchange. Eric Cuellar, he's CEO and founder of AgTech Tap and Interlink Software, and Matias O'Keefe, co-founder of UCropit, and they will be joining us at the table for the next session. And first, as Federico said, we will start with a Mentimeter. As yesterday is going to be focused mainly on AgTechs to respond. It's going to be related to this network, and this will serve to create inputs for the future discussion. I'll be open to everyone. So I'll be sharing screen, first of all, with this Menti to do this as quick as possible. The first question we have in Menti, which you can access through the QR code or the code on the top, 73435088, all AgTechs that are in the room to respond. And the question is, what purpose will we have to create an organization similar to the ones that were shown, but at continental scope? And here we want to learn the level of interest or commitment there could be. So we ask for you to start answering and for there not to be a very long silence. I'll share my microphone with those near me. Eric. Thank you, Carlos. Yeah, definitely. This type of initiative, like the one we just saw from Chile, are highly valuable for each one of us as startups. And not only for startups, I think for government institutions in general to have representation of a person who can represent us and not just bring together 20 startups and everyone wanting to have representation. I think this is very valuable. I think this should be replicated, at least in Central America. We're not that small. If we do it by country, it's not going to be very much. But to have a Central American representation, I think the other countries do have enough to be one for each country. But we should definitely do this, I think, to be able to have benchmark and interact with all these needs. We do need such entity. Thank you very much, Eric. And now, Matias. Of all the discussions we have had these days, I think it's clear to all of us that what we're doing is a very heterogeneous ecosystem, constantly changing producers in different countries, different sizes, different needs. So the food chain, from agro to the final customer, is very long, and we're all innovating. And it's impressive to see all the different startups that are available, how there's different nuances to add technology and innovation to all of this. We all know about several initiatives that have funds where the funds are seeking potentialities in their portfolios, like the one in Chile, which are also isolated initiatives that seek startups and seek communications for one side, for startups to look outside of their main focus to see what's available to help themselves, and then how to communicate directly with the corporate world or with the food chain, which is quite complex for startups and also for producers, and look to the sides of political part. We also saw in today's lecture. So all this from startups is very difficult for each one to articulate, and local networks like the ones generated by BCs and in Chile are very good, but from a offer and demand standpoint, and how to create a match sheets are much more scalable. This is quite a big challenge, and this way we can find opportunities to find specific startups in different countries and regions to fulfill a specific purpose and help and create a more global network this way. So from the market standpoint, I think it's completely necessary to generate this. Well, thank you very much. We have 22 answers already to this question. And what we'll do now is that those who have responded and in the room, we're going to evaluate these answers, and the mentees, you'll see you have the possibility to cast 3 votes to the ones you consider more important. This with the possibility with those different positions which you consider are the most relevant.
We're going to give you just a couple of more minutes so that you can vote using the same link that was being used before. I imagine that now you'll see an interface to vote on each one of the options you see, and there you can add or subtract points based on what you agree, whether you think that you agree, whether you think it's important to highlight it or not. And in this manner, after the following question, we will have time to look at the results very briefly and to just discuss it together, and then to move on to the next session and open the space in a final manner. We have 2, 3 people who voted already. I think that we need to click an absolute, otherwise the votes are not reflected. But let's give you just a couple of minutes. Very well. These have 17 votes here, so I'm going to move on to 22, 23. I think they're all coming in at once now, so let's go over this very briefly to then look at it later. The most positioned ones are concerning the purpose to position AgTech, the political agenda. I think that's been highlighted at several points, also to give visibility in light of cooperation funds when they implement impact projects in our countries. And here there's a number of stakeholders involved in this to identify partnerships or alliances, connections with corporations and the financing of pilot programs. And then we would have networking and creating high-value alliances. This is kind of related to the first one. Synergies between starters to access markets and funds, creating networks and best practices, and the exchange of experiences, synergies, and cooperation. Our result for the whole audience, any comments or any focus you want to do, it will be welcome. We will now move on to the following question, which is what type of organization and what operation dynamics would you develop to achieve the objectives that were mentioned? And here we have an example, in case you don't understand the question, and it's the organization type. It could be an informal work network, or it can be a formalized chamber, and the operational dynamic can be cooperative work with meeting every 6 months, or with an active membership and joint projects yearly. So the answer we seek here was this merging of ideas, the type of organization and the operational dynamics. And here we leave it open for any idea that you may want to share with the table. We'll sort of do the same dynamics to give time for people to answer. And I will first give it up to Matias so that he can tell us what he would answer. Good afternoon. I can be a little bit antagonistic, sis. I believe that people, when they're hungry, they want to focus on hunger in order to have a clear focus on results, means that things grow better and they seek the better of growing that are natural to their alignment. So I'm kind of biased with these types of things, but I believe that the organization has to depend on the success of an initiative like this. They have to seek the tools internally, and based on a value proposal, they can establish a startup and generate authentic products. So I'm more inclined to follow what something Chile said, which from a value perspective with generating relations and the consultancy that could be generated out of this, and the value that could be provided through facilitating this whole ecosystem can help it grow, give it a possibility of somehow happening organically. Perfect. I will now grant the floor to Eric. When we reach 20 answers or so, I will then give room to votation so that people know that they have to cast their ballot as appropriate. I personally believe that I follow the line of going with Francisco, asking for consultancy, looking at the model on our countries, how it would operate, and a lot based on what Matias said here. But why should we reinvent the wheel? There's a model there. It's starting. I don't know if it's the best model worldwide, but you have to adapt like everything else in life. And we have to kick off somewhere. Let's start with a baseline and let's work based on what our region needs, make the appropriate adjustments. Thank you very much, Eric and Matias. Again, we're at 20. I give you a couple more seconds. If you're still typing your answer, that will give you enough time to upload it. And then we move on to voting on the options that we have available there.
Bueno, ahí tenemos ya 22.
We have 22 there already. The same methodology as before. If you want to vote on the options available, if you want to look at the ones that are most representative, those are the ones that you consider more better focused, or the ones that you think that work best. Again, I think it's another 3 points that each participant has to distribute them among the pertinent answers. And then in the results, you can get a clear picture of what is a greater consensus concerning these types of organization and how they operate in order to achieve the objectives mentioned earlier, the aims that we were discussing. We have a single person, now 2. A lot of silence in the room. That means everybody's concentrating.
Bueno, pues ya tenemos 16 personas que han puntuado.
We have 16 persons who have scored the answers. I'm going to give you 20 more seconds to give time to whoever is halfway through the process. And then we'll look at the results obtained through this question as well. The idea behind this, of course, the results, we will have them at hand to analyze them, to share them. But the main idea is for it to work as supply for the upcoming discussion. We can see that one of the priorities is organization of the kind of federation of AgTech local association for each country. Another says to operate as a project hub for regional deployment and knowledge transfer. Another option also highly voted is community of practice, one annual event, but briefer. Another says legal association, online meetings monthly and in person every 6 months. And then we have other options such as a network of digital ambassador for the Americas, a legally established organizations with the ability to gather the representatives of actives from 34 countries, members in the Americas. Others are a yearly meeting and 6-month meeting online, an informal network, but a shared agenda. Another is a free and formalized chamber with synergy among startups and political figures that focuses on communicating with the government. And this is an informal collaborative network with meetings every 2 months. This is all food for discussion. And the last question, which we will now present to you, is what would you be willing to compromise or commit in order to create and maintain this organization? We've seen that answers have been widely varied, very heterogeneous. And here, this is what we saw these past few days and what Rosa was mentioning before, the commitment, what level of commitment exists among you. Here we have several different options that range from nothing, basically it's a scale, and the last one would encompass all of the foregoing. Nothing, provide ideas and suggestions would be the next level. The next would be to participate to meetings on a regular basis. The next is to undertake commitments in groups or working committees. And finally, actively spearhead its inception and operation. These are the 5 levels of engagement or commitment. As I mentioned, the last one would encompass all of the others because it's a greater level of participation.
No sé si queréis comentar brevemente estos resultados y así ya damos
I don't know
espacio.
if we want to comment on this. It's also to look at this level of engagement. I think that each and every one of us within us has a startup. There's challenges that we need to face. Either if we don't work, we can't bill anyone, we can't make an income. So we can't just sit and rest. But personally speaking, I would like to become very engaged. I believe that we need to give something back to society. I think that this would be extremely interesting. Obviously, we need to look at the internal cost of this, of devoting our time and minds to this. So, thank you, Eric. We can see that there's plenty of people who would be willing to spearhead, lead, and take on their shoulders the effort of lifting this whole thing up. It's important for the people involved in this have to have their interests aligned so that this can continue in the future. There are many people who are willing to undertake and engage with their full commitment, because this would require a geographical component to align this by country. But obviously, there's also lines of expertise. Where am I solving problems to bring forward more specific communication? So it'd be great to have people who organize this and can lead and carry forward topics in order to manage the dialogue among different organizations. Thank you very much. We can see the results here, which I'm going to stop sharing. As Matias mentioned, they're among they're linked to their answers. But now the idea is for all of these supplies to serve us as the discussion that will be led by Matias and Eric, and where we think that all of the participating persons can comment and make it possible to do brief comments. We have 15 minutes or 20, but this would allow for greater participation and nothing. We would close with a couple of minutes by presenting a website from the AgTech network. So I'll leave it there so that we can open up for exchange and anybody who wants to discuss. Before we start, who voted nothing? First of all, I wanted to congratulate you for this part in the event, seeking to position as a group how to go, where to go. I think that this is very important. I think that the answer to the question here is already shedding a lot of light, and then they can set our roadmap. And along this roadmap, maybe we can propose some indicators as a group. I think that this is all very important. When we have indicators, not just as a network, we can define very clearly what will be our north. And I think that will be very important. But for example, from the area of the funds, from the area of investment funds, it'll be very interesting to know what is the permeability, the scope of growth, and this will help us a lot in order to facilitate and support this ecosystem. I wanted to mention something. It's been the experience of the 2022 generation. It was us. As usual, in the first few weeks, everybody's communicating, but that started to lose traction. We, fortunately, are still very active. We are more active than official groups, but I believe that whatever you mentioned, the issue of maintaining metrics is very important. If we had maintained those metrics and we could present those metrics currently, you as an investor could say, well, the group stays active. And obviously, this is a group that has a potential and everything. But I would think that to implement metrics, that would be interesting. Obviously, we need to figure out how all of that is established so that we can give a clear example of providing, for example, saying this is a very important metric, what's been achieved here. Here we're talking about other cooperations that we will have at other levels. And if we maintain these metrics, I think that would be fabulous in order to truly show the whole group in a year what these metrics are achieved in this last period. I would invite people who take the mic to stand up so we can see them. Thank you. Here, as a fund, I, of course, precisely, the main comment I had was, what's our position in all of this topic of the funds? I saw very little mention of how we participate in this whole ecosystem and this platform, and even corporations. There was only a single mention of corporations, and perhaps I was talking as a venture capitalist. They were thinking maybe startups are going to do exits, and they don't all necessarily have that goal, right? But corporations are the one who are seeking the most innovation nowadays. They have their own branches of investment because precisely they're seeking innovation, and they know that they themselves, they cannot do this in an agile manner. The important part is to know that they're not seeking to invest in startups, in pre-seed or seed, not even in the A series. They want to make a lot of progress in the B series, which in Latin America, in AgTech in general, every type of startup still does not achieve that point. So to bring these corporations from the very early stage into this type of effort, call them whatever you want to call them, is important and I think is necessary. And the phones as well. In fact, my suggestion, and I immediately make the suggestion for the next week of digital agriculture, the funds, we don't necessarily have to be engaged throughout the whole week because the startups perhaps want to have a conversation amongst each other and they might want to have a little bit more privacy. But we come into play at some point and you have to look at and say, you are a marketplace. How difficult is it to reach the deal flow? And how difficult it is to find out who is there, who is actually gathering money. And sometimes the funds don't invest in sufficient startups because they don't know enough about it. They don't know who is participating in the ecosystem. That's essentially it. Thank you. Very well, excellent question. And I, from the startup perspective, and with regards to this topic, I have one example from one of the funds that was financed, and I use this as an example of the best practices along these lines. I don't think that there's I mean, everybody's very active, and to work with the generation within corporation on the topic of open innovation in order to have a room for these presentations. They work with consultants and they do something similar to what we're seeing in Chile, where they do consultancies and they have departments with open innovation and help them find a startup structure. And generally speaking, they work with their own startup portfolios and with their own investments. And so it's all very aligned within a single ecosystem, which is why I see value in this grouping, where truly these organizations can add their effort, VCs with also the locals based on geography, etc., also to have a broader spectrum. Based on what we recently saw in the survey, I would like you to think and envision about those who said that you would be willing to lead one of these initiatives. I would love to understand motivations to spearhead something like this, and what is that you think would be the initial spark or what's needed for this to remain in a presentation that can make a real progress. I would like to understand what initiatives could work along these lines. I think we agree. Raise your hand, but I think that there's a point in the topic of discussion, something that you mentioned as well, related to being in the network is already a part of the selection that AICA and each one of these selections made. It already sends us in a network environment. How can we perpetuate this? At the end of the day, we can define a specific mechanic, but I think that's what seems more important is how do we establish agendas? Because there's different countries here doing similar efforts, and this topic we should be able to discuss it, because what we lack is for AgTech's voices to be heard in different places. But instead, if we had a sectorial voice, then we would have that visibility. Aside from really seeking resources, stuff that we all seek, I think that really what unites us is how do we ensure that there's a whole AgTech environment, not just in our own countries, but in the region, that is growing and that it has difficulties, and that it ensures, look, we don't make it fourth, we don't only lose what we invest in this, but rather people who will not have the services needed because they don't even realize that they are needed. So in itself, the needs of the network, on the one hand, we need to start on that side with AICA, the partner that has led us here, and then from there start working on theme agendas. And I think that the spirit ahead this environment is to place this on the agenda. And I would take willingly some part of my time to really cover these important topics that maybe are not important for everyone, but at least for the majority. And this can lead to certain specific topics that can guide us. Let me add something there, something I found very interesting. The topic of being 45 AgTech selected, I think that we don't make it through as a center, but here we're passing through the AICA filters. There are people who had to move through this at a given moment. So I think that we should establish this solid network with the indicators, the net metrics. Definitely, we need to have a very simple web page, perhaps, where we can prove this. And whenever an investor is interested, he can move over there and see what each one is doing and why we were selected, and so that we can update this and see what we're doing, and have this filter looking back. And we, once a year, we're asked to have results, how we grew, what we're doing. And that wouldn't be great to have that dashboard of figuring out what's happening among each one of us, and to open the door to the venture capital, because we're all interested in venture capital. And we also have to do the pitch. We're not going to remove that from the process, but at least there would be a metric behind it that gives reliability to what we're doing. Hello, my name is Javier, and I am here as Agrocognitive Venezuela. This is regenerative agriculture, but I also came to this event with a hidden agenda, because we in Venezuela recently established last week the Venezuelan Association for Agricultural Technologies, which is similar to the one in Chile. In fact, in Francisco, I saw him in the airport and I asked them about how they're operating, because if we started in January, obviously things are slow. The actual agreement was signed last week, but I'll share what happened with us in this brief time frame. From the moment we announced that we were gathering, at the moment it was 8 AgTechs, now that we're only 12. But something that was very interesting happened. Many farmers started donating land to us, so that we could open these smart fields, so that we could start doing these things privately. The state has not been involved in this at all. And what's interesting about this is that this movement involving farmers, now we have too much land. We don't know what we're going to do with it. But ONUDI proposed a project to build that smart field. And so I think that this will generate an interesting synergy. And one thing I was telling Francisco about is that Abad has been approached by many entrepreneurs, many people from the AgTech field, with some very new ideas, still at the ideation stage, at the envisioning stage, and they approached us to validate. They would say, I have this idea, Venezuelan aguacate has this and this feature, I want to focus on the standards for export, etc. And it has been very helpful for that, to provide a space for people to validate their ideas. And in fact, they ended up inviting us to be co-founders with them and to kind of help them gain, traction to their initiative. So really, I wanted to highlight the fact that these spaces are great for co-creation and that really gives sustainability to the whole ecosystem. Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Why would I engage myself or lead or spearhead or dedicate part of my time? Because I think that, together we stand. It might sound cliche, but it's been proven. Already being here has opened a lot of doors for me, a lot of possibilities, a lot of them. Because also, I echo the words of Lawrence's presentation today. I want to be a herd of unicorns. I don't want to be a single unicorn. Hopefully, as a herd, I can become a hectacorn at one point, maybe. But with a herd of horses, I think we have power behind us. And that's it. I think that's it. If we all devote a little bit of our time to this, young people are proving this, at least those who are younger than I am, that they are collaborative, that they are open. That's what the world is aiming for. And I'm happy to see how everybody is opening up to this. Francisco is showing people who say, I'll give you my client. That's how many AgTechs work. Matthias shares his clients with mine, I with Matthias. I think that the market is big enough for the sun to shine on all of us. And if we join efforts, we will have a lot of power behind us. And in fact, I think that we can position ourselves very well. I think that's something that is lacking in the agricultural sector, starting from the farmers throughout the whole. The agricultural sector doesn't know how to join efforts to position themselves. In Argentina, that's what happened. Farmers don't join efforts and they're not on the political agenda. And if you're not on the political agenda, that's bad. But if we're all together, then we'll position ourselves well on the political agenda. We can have a great impact and we'll be heard. At some point, they'll have to hear us. So I devote part of my time for this purpose. Because as we say in Argentina, I believe in it. Very well. Thank you very much. The important thing is to stay young in your mind. Then the rest will follow. It's very interesting to understand the interest behind this engagement. It's important to join efforts and to start writing down bullet points. There are many interesting topics that came up here, and it's important for them to have people who will be assigned to them, be responsible for them.
Well, thank you. Mainly, I thank Kaika and each one of you who took the time this week to be here. I think it's highly valuable to hold these type of activities, especially us as startups. It gives us great visibility, obviously to private as well as public initiative for them to see what's happening through this AICA effort to bring us together. Very thankful with all of you, with this friendship we've been able to maintain this group, and I hope to make new friends besides 2024. I cannot buy you all beer. I don't know where I would take you. But in any case, thank you all for being here and participating in this Digital Agriculture Week. Thank you very much, Eric and Matias. And now I give the floor to Federico for a moment for him to close this session. I just want to say that AICA's effort is shared from bringing you here for EDLAX, CGIAR, with Bayer, with all of them are part of this summons, and in past years, Microsoft, World Bank, BitLab, that on one hand. On the other hand, something very practical. Those who know me know I go into action immediately. All those who said you would be willing to lead, contact me in privacy if you want to say your names, but we can start building something. AICA will invest time, my time, the team's time, and possibly resources to implement all this. Perfect then, and you all know those who are who said you would commit, you have to go. I want to thank Matias and Eric, as I said, and to all the participants, and just for being here. It's already an important result. And now I'll for 5 minutes. We won't take much of your lunchtime. Caterina Almazo, who is part of the program, for her to present an initiative or the website of AgTech. Good morning, and before going to lunch, I'll share briefly. And there you can see the presentation and this initiative we have from the ICA's AgTech platform, where we participate, Federico, Carlos, and Ellis, in creating this AgTech platform of the Americas to have a visibility. Do you have the pointer? Which has the objectives of achieving this visibility of digital solutions for challenges of the agri-food system in Americas. And this is basically a database we have created, well, for some 3 years now. And what we have developed is a website in which you can query all this information from this database. The important thing is that it's a website for it to be collaborative, and we want AgTech to also suggest changes, add AgTech, and thus have a more dynamic database. The important thing is that it's based on digital solutions, everything related to the use of digital tools for agro, and also to facilitate access to information. As someone recently asked, to find contacts, to know where these tactics are located, which are their solutions, and for this to be also a tool for public policies, for them to know where the AgTech solutions are in each country, which places have more or less of these. So where can you find us? We encourage you to visit our website. There's a QR code. It's still under construction. Don't be surprised if there's any information that is still not complete. We're still in the process of design and construction of that website, but it's already available. And what I brought is a short video for you to see how you can browse in the website and what things you'll find in this website. This is the initial interface. There you'll see you can filter by sector, crops, for instance, by subsector, to be more specific. For instance, pesticides or irrigation systems, water systems, several options. And you can also filter your search by technologies, satellite, sensing, IoT, and also by country, and search. And there you'll find a list of all the ones we have available, which are over 300 approximately. We still have a lot, and you could find specifically each one and their description. You can visit each AgTech's website. That's for instance, and you can also suggest changes or editing, and it'll take you to the menu and to classify these as you wish. We added more information, and then we received that request to then upload it in the database. The other option is to add a new company. You can classify, add all the necessary information in these 3 categories, or the other option is to search by name, and there you can find the search. You can do your search basically.
Fue totalmente aleatorio.
So this is completely random, believe me. So this is basically what you'll find for now in this website, this platform. And it was very brief to show you the initiative, and thank you very much for this opportunity. And I think since we already have a website, it's only about coordinating with AICA and add indicator and that type of thing. I think it would be a very easy way to have something very quickly. Since someone's asking for indicators, let's go ahead and do that. I also, we can add organization, funds, technological services, all these things. Very well then, thank you very much. We close here. We're a little behind with lunch to see if we can recover some time, and you know where lunch is, and we'll meet there and we'll reconvene in an hour and a half approximately.